The business world is naturally concerned with ethics. According to economist Alexander Wagner of the University of Zurich, 1 out of 7 companies operating today engages in systematically fraudulent behavior. His data indicates that this costs consumers and shareholders an estimated $380 billion a year in the United States. There's a cost to companies as well. As Wagner reminds us, reputation is very important to future business.
Swiss banks who get caught up in media and in the context, for example, of tax evasion, of tax fraud, have bad media coverage. They lose net new money in the future and therefore make lower profits. That's a very powerful reputational force.
A company's brand is just another name for its reputation. Damage the reputation, and you destroy the brand. According to a study, investors prefer to invest with companies whose CEOs are perceived as honest, and the market believes companies more when managers in the past have not engaged in earnings management. Clearly, the abandonment of ethics has long-term effects on a company's viability. But moving away from senior management, unethical behavior among rank-and-file employees also has troubling effects on companies. According to a 2012 report from the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, the typical U.S. business loses 7% of its annual revenues to employee fraud. Most people in the business world are highly ethical individuals, however. They are deeply concerned with ways to ameliorate the situation. Leaving the cubicle, however, for the world of psychology, Tom Butler-Bowden says, quote, "Our environment shapes us into what we are, and we change the course of our actions according to what is good for our survival. If we want to construct a better world, we need to create environments that make people act in more moral or productive ways." Toward that end, it might be good to remind people that when Newton first suggested that gravity affected planets in the solar system, he was denounced for peddling pseudoscience. Influence at a distance, his detractors scoffed, "What you're describing is magic." This prejudice was still in place centuries later when Michael Faraday suggested that flows of electrons generated an electric field. The chorus of dissenters echoed Newton's antagonists by charging that the existence of fields suggested magic. To explain this erroneous belief, it might bear pointing out that ever since the 1500s, European scientists conceptualized the universe as being composed of bodies and vacuums. They assumed that all of reality was the result of particles suspended in a void. It never occurred to them that there were fields connecting particles one to the other. And as you change the field, you can influence the particles in the field. Likewise, people are not particles suspended in a void. They're submerged in an invisible field whether they know it or not, called culture. In his book, The Price of Everything, Eduardo Porter says, a common and in my view accurate critique of economists' worldview is that it often ignores how culture affects our choices, positing people as calculating, self-involved creatures oblivious to any notion of social good. Homo economicus is supposed to approach life as a string of cost-benefit analyses, evaluating the prices involved in each decision to maximize his individual well-being. He adds that culture often influences us to surrender our own narcissistic needs to the wider community. Quote, "It codifies acceptable forms of behavior. Collective notions of propriety often determine individual calculations." Neuroscience may shed some light on the phenomenon. The human brain contains things called mirroring neurons, which incline humans to imitate people around them. For instance, if you hold a baby up that is only 20 minutes old and stick your tongue out at it, the infant will respond in like manner. Though the infant has no idea what a human is or any consciousness that it has a tongue, it is primed to imitate the adult. This is thanks to those mirroring neurons in the F4 and F5 regions of the human brain. Mirroring neurons were first discovered at the University of Parma in Italy in the 1990s. The discovery was made when electrodes were put in the brain of a macaque in a totally different experiment. One day when the macaque noticed some grad students eating, researchers were fascinated to notice that portions of the macaque's brain associated with motor movements were lighting up, indicating that the macaque's mind was mirroring the behaviors of people around it. This same imitative faculty has not been lost on humans. And this neurophysiological phenomenon can be leveraged to change the climate in a workplace. According to the Hay Group, it's the leader in an organization who impacts climate up to 70%. If a CEO signals that he genuinely prizes ethical behavior and expects it from others, then a natural tendency will arise in those within his sphere of influence. The influence of senior management on the culture of a company cannot be overstated. If the CEO signals that there is a certain amount of prestige associated with ethics, then that cultural cue will ripple down to the rest of the company. If signage promoting ethics is placed on the walls of the business, if perks are tied to ethical behavior, if new employees are assured that they were hired due to their high ethical standards, then a message will be sent. In the workplace of the future, ethics directors will be commonplace in human resources departments, as will annual ethics awards for employees and ethical retreats for senior management. It will be part of the energetic field created within the organization that invisibly sets the parameters of the culture within the company, a far more effective methodology than forgettable HR guidelines that few people read and even less people remember. It is our goal to sketch out the map of the system to reorganize a company to subtly institute a culture that will not only aid in making the organization more profitable, but will also assist the wider society in promoting ethics.